Hello everyone and welcome along to another post-match immediate reaction podcast from TII. My name is Craig Dennett and I'll be your host as we look back on another disappointing day for Rangers as we drew one each in Paisley with St Mirren. I'm joined by Ross Chalmers today to look back over the action, who I'm still not sure has been on a post-match reaction where we've actually won. But welcome along, Ross, anyway. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's good to be here, obviously. Yeah, I was thinking that when I was watching the game there, I was thinking I'm going to have to do this again. I'm going to have to talk about a terrible result again. So, yep, this is when I get pulled out by This Is Ibrox. This is clearly my time to shine. But, yeah, just all round disappointing, isn't it? It's I'm actually fearful of getting stuck into this, but that's what we need to do.
Yeah, hopefully this is as cathartic as I'll start that one again. Hopefully this is cathartic for us and cathartic for everyone listening as well. I think it's got to be over for Giovanni van Bronckhorst. As I think I was on the podcast after the Livingston game at Ibrox when we drew one each, and it's got to be over. In terms of his reign, there's just poor tactics, poor team selection throughout his domestic reign. Really, away form's been abysmal throughout 2022. The players don't look like they've got any motivation at all. There's no signs of improvement in their form or in even their attitude. It seems to be going completely the opposite way. We've been beaten quite heavily by Celtic a couple of times already. European performances this season, I've tried to keep them separate from the domestic stuff because I am very much aware of how big a step up Ajax, Napoli and Liverpool are, but they still got to be considered. He's clearly lost the fans. He lost the fans weeks ago, but more than ever now. There's going to be some questions over recruitment as well, and we'll come on to talk about Ross Wilson at some point in this podcast. And it just looks like, I think for a long time, we've been asking, what is Giovanni van Bronckhorst's management style? How does he want us to play? Everyone's annoyed about the whole horseshoe thing from fullback to fullback. But it's very much looked like a training game today, Ross. I think as much as we don't want to see that, but it was very much loads of possession, but no penetration, no creativity, no real attacking threat. Although I do think Ryan Kent was one of the only ones potentially that took responsibility. Do you think it's time up for Gio?
Yeah, I think so. I think my mind changed last weekend after the defeat to St Johnstone. I thought there was too much. I was very close after that draw with Livingston at home because I think what was more worrying that day, like I've seen Rangers' performances at Ibrox where they've struggled to break teams down that sit in that kind of low block. We've seen it under Gerrard multiple times, but that day worried me more than most because I didn't see a fight. I didn't see fight from the team. And I think that's bled into the rest of the games. I think we've seen that on Wednesday night against Hearts. We obviously created a nice bit of play that night to get the goal, but really that was it. There's really no spark here. And the manager's just not been able to get a tune out of these players for a long time now. And the rating's been on the wall for a long time, I think, for this manager. I don't think he can recover from this. And a lot of fans will rightly be questioning why he's still in the position right now. And I'm probably at the same point now. I don't really understand how the board aren't making a decision here. You can quite clearly see that these players are not playing for him. The big players aren't playing for him. Even the reaction to the goal today, I didn't feel was a team that was really ready to go and grab that result. It was just like, oh, we've managed to maybe save a draw here, and that's just not the attitude that we need. So yeah, I think it's over for the manager. Unfortunately, it's been a bit of an experiment that's went wrong, and I can see by the comments, obviously a lot of people agree. I mean, I can see one there from, I think it's Mark Mitchell, and he's saying around, the Livingston, St Johnstone, St Mirren and the Champions League embarrassment. I think you said there regarding the Champions League that I was the same as you. I tried to separate them. But it looks like those defeats in Europe have just bled into our domestic form. The team look short of confidence and he has not been able to recover. And the squad hasn't been able to cover. And look, we've got injuries. Of course we do. We had a few coming into this game today. Leon King goes off injured. We have been unlucky in some aspects, but this is a manager that has not been able to to put his print on this team. He's not been able to really set a style or an identity, and that's what happens. You can't go through a league season just constantly grinding out results. It will eventually catch up with you. So yeah, it looks like we need a management change now.
Yeah, I think that's the overall consensus we're seeing in the comments. I think it's the overall consensus there's been for weeks. I personally was still expecting the announcement to come out last Sunday after the St Johnstone game. Even after Sunday night passed and we went into Monday morning, I was even still probably about 50 to 75% certain the announcement was coming. And then it just dragged on and dragged on. We had Hearts during the week. We kind of stumbled to a 1-0 win there over what's actually quite a poor Hearts team, if we're really honest with ourselves. And then today, I think it's just a bit of a malaise that's come across everything from the board to the management to the team to the fans. I think everything's just gone. There's no buzz around the club. Last season there was a buzz around the club as we went through the European run, and that just seems to have completely gone, doesn't it, Ross?
I didn't have any emotion watching that game today. I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
I didn't. Even when St Mirren scored, I'm usually, if I'm in Ibrox, I'm up probably ranting, and when I'm in my house, I'm very vocal as well. But I didn't. There was no emotion today when St Mirren scored. It was kind of inevitable. I felt that was the way the game was going. If you showed that game to maybe an American football fan, I'm trying to think of someone that doesn't really follow British football, and you show them these two teams, there's no way that you would feel that the Rangers team were full of players getting paid 5 to 10 times more than St Mirren. It was two evenly matched teams that we didn't stamp our authority on that game at all. And really, overall, St Mirren deserve something from that game. And I'd argue they should probably deserve the win, to be honest. I thought they were pretty comfortable. We didn't put them under any really extended periods of pressure. And yeah, I think that's the problem for me now. And I think that's what a lot of fans have. People are starting to not care. You'll always have that, love for Rangers and you'll want them to win. But the disconnect now between the fans and this management team, and it's the players as well now, because they took us on such a fantastic run last year in Europe. But I don't feel that connection with the players anymore. And I'd like to think that these players are not as bad as they are playing. And I really do believe another manager could get more out of them. So I think that's the bit that worries me more than anything. I'm so thankful for this World Cup break. I don't know how you feel, but I'm so thankful it's came. Now, of course, I wanted to go into that World Cup break with better results and being closer to Celtic. That's not the case, but I'm still thankful for it because we really are struggling right now. And this is the perfect time to make a change, in my opinion. You've got a good 4 or 5 week period, bring someone in and use the second half of this season to really bed someone in and get their style across. So yeah, just emotionally flat. That's how I feel right now.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that, and I do think now is the perfect time. I think the board seem to have been trying to get to this point. That's what it looks like from the outside anyway, although we don't have any communication from the board, or there's not any leaks coming from them as to what their mindset is. So they could be entirely happy or content with what's been going on. And I know there was an Athletic article from Jordan Campbell that focused on he's got a bit more leeway because of the injuries that have been there. And I think, to be honest, I think if all of us fans saw it coming the last couple of weeks, I think after that Livingston game, everyone, or the vast majority, I won't say that every Rangers fan agrees, because we know that never happens, but I say the vast majority of Rangers fans saw the writing on the wall, and they were calling for Giovanni van Bronckhorst to be sacked. You do wonder if the St Johnstone result and today's result happen if we do have a new manager in, or you do have an interim coach even in place during that time. You do wonder if the team gets a bit of a boost, if there's a bit of a change in style, a bit of a different energy about the place. Because like you say, the players aren't as bad as they are showing at the moment, but the problem is they're showing consistently bad performances over 4 or 5 weeks now. So
it's a team not playing for their manager, isn't it? That's it. You can see visibly on that park that players are not, and I apologize for cutting you off there. It was just when you were talking about the kind of performances we're seeing. I think John Lundstrom's last few performances just show exactly what's going on in that changing room. They do not back this manager. I've never seen such lackluster performances from John Lundstrom. He's usually the one you can really rely on to drive this team. He's not a captain, but he's always vocal. He's always running with it. He's good power when he's on the ball. He'll fly into tackles if he need to. I don't see that from him at all. I just don't think there's anything coming from this team that makes me think they're still backing this manager. As for Michael's comment there, I mean, it's tough. I think I agree with Michael that the board wouldn't sack him, but I'm now at the point where I think they have to. I think they've probably given it as much time as they can. They've wanted them to try and turn it around. And of course, I can understand the second point about the board not backing him with signings. That is fair, but I think that squad that Van Bronckhorst has, he has to be getting more out of them. I think both can be true. I think you can say that the board maybe haven't backed Van Bronckhorst in the way that he would have liked, and he might have wanted to see more come in. But listen, we look at our starting lineups for the last 2-3 games, 4 games that we've dropped points in. There's no way you're looking at those teams and thinking we don't have enough. We don't have enough to beat Livingston, St Johnstone, St Mirren. It's just not true. That he should be getting more out of this team, regardless of the injuries. So, listen, I agree with Michael's point on a lot of things, but I don't know if we can say now that he's been hung out to dry, because I think he's still got a squad there that he should be doing better with, in my opinion, especially domestically.
Yeah, absolutely. And the domestic form is where we really need to see that improvement. We saw that in the 55 winning season, that consistency domestically just brings everyone together, and it's what breeds success. And sadly, it's what we're seeing on the other side of the city, and I think that only acts to highlight it even more, how poorly we are playing from that side of things. Ross, we entered this kind of period from the last international break till now. We knew we had 8 league games plus the League Cup game against Dundee domestically. I think all of us thought 9 wins out of 9 and you're in a good position by the time we reach the point we're at today, which is the World Cup break. We ended it with 6 wins, including the Dundee League Cup game, 2 draws and a defeat. It's just completely unacceptable. And we're currently 6 points behind. I know Celtic are playing as we record this, likely to be 9 points behind by the time we reach the World Cup break. It's unacceptable. And I actually, because I was so convinced that the board should have acted after the Livingston game at Ibrox when we drew 1 each, that the last 2 weekends, St Johnstone away, St Mirren away, they're absolutely 100% on the board for not acting. I think Rangers fans saw the writing on the wall. I think people outside of the club saw the writing on the wall. They saw results like today and last week coming. The Rangers board should have acted if they were taking seriously any of our title hopes or any of our title ambitions, and they've just let it rumble on, get worse, and we've arrived at today where we are potentially 9 points behind Celtic heading into the World Cup break. And effectively the league campaign is over, if that's the case, that it does reach the 9 point mark, if it wasn't already over at the 7 point mark. I completely agree that this is the time to change manager. There will be a lot of movement, not just with ourselves, but with other clubs as well, where managers are let go. And effectively it works as a mini pre-season as such for quite a lot of clubs, and a bit of a reset. I think that for us in particular, where we've got Borna Barisic going to the World Cup and that's it. So we've got the full squad there for 4 or 5 weeks. They get a week, 10 days off, and then you're full into prep. You're full into fixing everything that's been an issue up until now. You're fully into almost resetting the style and resetting how we want to play and how we want to approach games at Ibrox, and also how we want to approach games against the likes of St Mirren. This is the perfect chance to do that, but we absolutely have to utilise this to its utmost, and we absolutely have to have a recruitment ideas in place for January if they're not already. Gio said he didn't know what was happening in January during the week, which was a real concern, because by this point they should know what's happening in January, should know the budget, should know the target players, and should be fairly confident as to who's coming in and who's not. But he doesn't seem, I don't know whether he's just trying to be a bit aloof when he comes across in press conferences, but I've started listening to his press conferences, his post-match interviews. We've spoken about this before. Don't find them motivating at all. Don't find them in any way interesting to listen to or to get myself up for the game. Ross, do you think the board will sack him either tonight or tomorrow?
Oh, I'm not convinced. You know that I think they should, but I'm not convinced. I think they might let it go maybe a week longer. They might have kind of what you would maybe say is crisis talks over the next couple of days to maybe see the direction this team's going in. I'm sure that Van Bronckhorst will defend himself and feel that he's been a wee bit unlucky this season and injuries have just, taken their toll on this squad. But it's just not. It's not the case for me anymore. I think we've seen him come in, and clearly Van Bronckhorst's style is all about adapting to the opposition, and he wants to feel like he's in control in most games. Okay, and that suited us last year in Europe. You could see a manager that was really clued up and knew how to identify maybe weaknesses and opposing teams in Europe, and that's fine. But he's never been able to nail down a style that works for us domestically. And unfortunately, we need a manager that can do both. We need a manager that can really nail down a style that wins us games domestically each week, comfortably, you'd argue. And we also need a manager that can take us into Europe and, of course, not take us to the Europa League final every year, but we need a manager that can help us compete at this level. And he's not been able to nail the domestic part. And I think we've seen warning signs very early on in his reign that he was struggling domestically. He's just not been able to break teams down at all. And we have grinded out a lot of results. Even when we went on that good run, I think when he first came in, there was a lot of performances in there. You were like, it's just not enough. We're not seeing enough from this team. As for the question, do I see them sacking him? I actually don't. I think they might give him this time. I think they might just give him this season. See if we can get players back, late December and into January, and see if we can try and salvage something. See if we can maybe win one of the domestic cups. I hate to say this, and it's probably not very staunch of me, but the league is finished, and that's why I would make a change, because we don't want to be too complimentary of the other side of the city, but they have a style that is nailed down domestically, and they batter teams. And you have to be honest and say that, and we just do not have that, and I just don't think that we're going to be able to plug the gap on them, unfortunately. So, do I think they'll sack him? No, I don't. But would I? Yeah, I would. I seen a comment earlier, I think it was from Scott Mitchell, saying, he wouldn't walk away from a wage, and I wouldn't either. So in Van Bronckhorst's position, I can totally understand why he's not going to resign. I know I've seen a lot of fans saying he should resign. He's taking the team backwards. Listen, he's not going to do that. He wants to pay off. So yeah, let's hope that they can come to some sort of agreement, and we can let him go and we can move on and we can bring in someone that's really going to, take us to the next level again.
Yeah, I disagree with you, actually. I think the board will sack him, and I think one of the reasons they will sack him is that they don't want 4 weeks, 5 weeks of just constant negativity about them. People in those positions don't like the focus to be on them, and when there's no football to be played and there's a decision to be made, and if there's just silence from the Rangers board, the focus will be, and the ire of all the Rangers fans, or the vast majority of Rangers fans, will be completely on them, and I don't think they'll want that over the next 4 or 5 weeks. I think they will, even if they think from a footballing perspective they can potentially turn it around, or they'd quite like to give them the chance to turn it around, I think the anger that's going to come after today's result is only going to increase. It's only going to fester as well, because there's no next game to focus on for 4 or 5 weeks. And as much as we all like the World Cup, and I imagine most of us will be watching most of the games in the World Cup, it's not going to distract from how Rangers have been playing and how disappointed we've been as a team so far. Ross, just going to touch on...
Does the criticism move on to Ross Wilson then, though? Do you think they would make that change? Because that's exactly where the criticism's going to turn to. If Van Bronckhorst goes, it will be right now. You're next in line. And do you think they'd want that through that World Cup break? that's maybe the thing that makes me think they're not going to do it, and they'll just stick with this manager until the end of the season now. But I totally understand where you're coming from, and it's a good point. It's just that's what makes me. Ross Wilson's been very quiet through all of this. We've not heard from Ross Wilson since March, maybe, I think, publicly speaking. And I just wonder if they get rid of the manager, everything's going to pile on him, and I just don't know if they want that either. But of course, I can see your point of view as well. It's perfectly valid.
Yeah, it's like you read my mind there, talking about Ross Wilson, because that was going to be the next point. If Gio does fall on his sword and is sacked, do you think Ross Wilson deserves another shot with another manager, or do you think actually his record over the past 4 seasons shows that he's not actually finding the players that we need him to find, and he's not building a squad, and he's tied in too many of our older players, or I'll call them legacy players, guys like Tav, guys like Barisic that have been around for quite a long time. I think he's tying those players into long contracts that kind of tie our hands as such, and we end up with a bloated squad, and they're on high wages, so we struggle to bring in the level of quality that we need to add to the squad and freshen up. Do you think he should survive and get another chance with another manager, or do you think it's time for him to go to?
I'm not as critical as Ross Wilson as most. I think there's been a plan in place since Ross Wilson came in, and I would like to think that up until this season, things have been going pretty well. Of course, we didn't win the league last year, and that was a disappointment, but that was a squad that made it all the way to the Europa League final, and he was a big part of building that along with Steven Gerrard. And he's also helped us really get into that player trade model, which we always talk about. So I don't remember a lot of criticism of Ross Wilson about a year ago when Van Bronckhorst came in. I don't remember anything about recruitment being particularly poor. Of course, we've always been screaming about needing a right winger or that number 8, of course. And that is definitely, he deserves criticism for that because he's just not been able to find that position for us. But I don't remember the criticism a year ago, and I don't know if it's wise for us to completely rip up the plan that's been put in place just because the manager hasn't worked out. Of course, he deserves criticism for that, and his role needs looked at. Of course, listen, you make if my job every day, if I make a wrong decision, I get criticised. You know, these things will happen, and he's going to make mistakes. But I just don't know if it's wise to completely rip everything up, because that's what you're going to do if you bring in a new sporting director, technical director of football, whatever you want to call it. The plans go with him. You know, of course, he'll have put things in place that you'd like to think people will keep going. But if he's the one that's spearheading all of that, I just worry. I just don't think the club are going to go down that route. I think they're going to keep Ross Wilson. He's here for the long haul. Does he deserve criticism for the Van Bronckhorst appointment? Of course he does. He's got it wrong. And I'd like to think that he'll have learned from this, and he'll go back into the manager market, and he'll bring someone in that he can clearly see that's going to address the problems that we've got in the squad. You know, I don't really think it's worth putting names out there at the moment, but there is one that springs in my mind that somebody might look at, is Hasenhüttl from Southampton, because of the relationship he's had, and he maybe feels that, again, I've got a good relationship with this guy, I can bring him in and he can help me with this plan. I don't know, but for me, Ross Wilson deserves criticism, absolutely. Everyone at that level deserves criticism. The team are not performing, and when the team don't perform, listen, the scattergun comes out and everyone gets it, and I totally understand, and he 100% deserves criticism, but I just don't think he's worth getting rid of at this point. I don't think there's enough there to make me think that the whole plan behind the scenes from the club is completely rotten. Of course, there's problems with the first team right now, but there's a lot of good going on in the background. So, yeah, I might take stick for that. But personally, I wouldn't remove Ross Wilson. I would give him another opportunity to appoint a manager.
Ross, I just want to bring up Dave's comment there of what are Wilson's major successes you can point to. Having a think while you were answering there, I think you look at Bassey, you look at Aribo, you look at Goldson signing a new contract, you look at Cholak. Cholak's arrival. Outside of that, I'm probably struggling. I might have forgotten a few off my head, but I'm probably struggling. I think.
Surely the director of football has to get credit and praise though when the team are performing on the park, because he's getting criticism now when they're not. So surely when the team get to the Europa League final and they win the league title and things like that, surely the director of football deserves credit for that. You know, as of course it's the team that's playing, but he's the one that's played a big part in building that squad. I don't think it's fair that we can criticise him based on the team performance this year, but then don't give him credit when the team are playing well. That doesn't really make sense to me. As coming to recruitment, you're always recruitment is never 100%. You're always going to get signings wrong. It's just impossible to get every single signing correct. So I'm not going to be too harsh in there.
Ross, I don't think everyone's saying he needs to get every signing correct, but he does need to get more correct than he has done so far. I think you're fair on the Europa League final, and it is something that everyone attributes to Gio as well, and a reason why some people are giving him more time. But in the same way that fans are disillusioned with Giovanni van Bronckhorst and the style of football we're playing and the performances and the results, the exact same length of time has passed for Ross Wilson and the summer transfer window when we needed a major overhaul, and we saw the likes of Stephen Davis and Scott Arfield and Al McGregor all offered 1 year additional contracts. I think Stephen Davis is definitely seems to be over the hill and past it as much as I don't like saying that, because I think he's been a great player for us, but he's not contributing a great deal to us. Al McGregor was supposed to be the number 2. We actually should have gone out in the summer and got a new goalkeeper, but we didn't. John McLaughlin came in. He was disappointing for a number of games, particularly at Celtic Park. And Al McGregor's actually found himself coming in as a number 1 again. I think that's a result of poor squad management more than it is a result of Al McGregor being the goalkeeper that we want for that position. And Scott Arfield, I think Scott Arfield is doing what I expected of Scott Arfield: come off the bench, make a contribution, score a handful of goals from there, run beyond the striker, but he's just not as consistent as he has been in seasons. Maybe he's just not had his 10-game purple patch as such yet that he seems to have every year. But I think when you look at, there's lots of signs that point to stuff not being right in terms of the squad build, the player management, the contract management, all of that sort of stuff. There seems to be a real lack of cohesiveness in that plan. And I think even when you look at it, we'll come on to talk about 2 players now actually that in terms of today's game. So Ryan Kent's contract's obviously running down. People have been criticising him quite a bit over the past month or 2, or most of the season pretty much, that his numbers aren't there. He looks low on confidence. He's not providing the assists. He's not really being effective in any way whatsoever in the team. I actually think when you look at the Hearts game and then you look at today, Ryan Kent is one of the only players, really, argument potentially there for Malik Tillman, but one of the only players that has actually stood up to be counted and took responsibility and tried to make stuff happen. And I thought, actually, to give him praise, I think he's been good for us in the last couple of games, and he's been effective. I'll get your thoughts on Ryan Kent in a second, Ross, but the other player I wanted to bring in, because his contract's running down to the end, is Alfredo Morelos. And what I don't even know how to describe how bad that performance was from Alfredo Morelos today. I feel like I could have done better on that pitch than Alfredo Morelos did. And he just offered us absolutely nothing, and he's light years away from where he was sort of 2018, 2019, even 2020, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Alfredo Morelos because this was bothering me during the game. I thought it was absolutely shocking today. That was it. I mean, his first touch was genuinely awful, like really bad, and just looks a player that is just not interested anymore. He doesn't want to be here. And listen, that I'm expecting when a player plays for Rangers, I totally understand that players will have aspirations to go and compete at a higher level than Scotland, and that's fine. You know, I can totally understand that. He's not a Rangers fan, and he wants to go and test himself at the highest level. But I tell you what, he's not doing anything to earn himself a contract at any other club at a higher level than us. And he won't be getting a contract with us now. There's absolutely no chance. Talks will be dead, and they won't be restarting, in my opinion. He's clearly got the hump this season because Cholak's been selected ahead of him, and quite rightly, because he's not been fit. He's fell out with the manager. This is a guy that's not interested anymore, and he shouldn't get a contract. Listen, I love Alfredo Morelos for what he's done for us. He's been absolutely immense. Some of his performances, especially in the big games, have been really good. But he's starting to tarnish it now, and I would rather he just moves on now, and we can try and keep hold of some of the good memories about Alfredo Morelos, because he's just completely ruining everything he's built up with the fans, especially. So, yeah, Alfredo Morelos, no excuses for him. Shocking again today, and there's a reason why he's not been playing. I know he looked bright when he came on against the Hearts the other night, but listen, you've seen it today. He's been given the 90 minutes today, and he's not done anything to show us that he actually wants to still be here. So, it sounds brutal, but if a bid comes in for him in January, don't think it will, but if a bid did, I would just let him go. I would just let him go. I think you can potentially bring someone in that will provide more for us for the rest of the season when it's this version Alfredo Morelos anyway. As for Ryan Kent, I'm glad you've given him some praise, because I think I've spoken about this a few times. I try and defend Ryan Kent as much as I can. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's been absolutely fantastic this season. He's not. He's not been anywhere near the level, but I think what Ryan Kent gives us is something like that again today. You've seen it against Hearts, the ability to beat three men and play Borna, and today, he's beat his fullback down the line. He's skipped by the covering defender, and he's won as a penalty. And I thought his work rate today, Ryan Kent, was really good, like tracking back as much as he could. There was times where St Mirren were breaking and he was the one bursting back. That's not a guy that's completely chucked it for me in terms of playing for Rangers. Maybe he doesn't believe in this manager like a lot of the players, but I don't think that's a player that completely doesn't want to be here and doesn't want to fight. And I think that's why he has to play. I just think we struggle without him to really create anything. I really don't believe if Ryan Kent wasn't on that part today, we would have secured a result. We wouldn't have. We didn't have anything. Even guys like Scott Wright, who looked bright against Hearts, wasn't really great today. Malik Thielman was good first half. Anonymous second half, hardly touched the ball second half. So, yeah, I'm glad you've gave him some praise there, Kent. He's certainly the one out of the two that I would like to see the club try and secure, because I think you can get more out of him. He's 26, and I think there's a potential that you could sell him on and make money out of it. So he's the one I'd like to secure. But as for Morelos, no, time's up now. I think people are just sick of him now, and it's time to let him go. I can see here with Dave saying about he shouldn't play again and Colak not scoring. Yeah, that's the problem overall, isn't it? We don't have strikers firing at the top of their game, and we don't get enough goals from our wide players. But like I say, I'll always go back to it. There's no way that all of these players can all just become bad players overnight. It's just not possible. This is a team that done really well for us last year. Often, of course, not in the league, but that run to the Europa League final. And of course, we need to put that behind us. But I just mean that squad is pretty much the same squad. We've lost some good players in Aribo and Calvin Bassey, but you're not telling me the majority of players in that squad are past it or over the hill. They're not. So when all the players are in such poor form, in my opinion, it comes down to the management team and the style that management team is trying to play. So, yeah, Morelos, get rid of him.
Yeah, Ross, you mentioned the creativity angle there, and as soon as we went 1-0 down today, which I think was the fourth time in the last 5 league games that we went 1-0 down, which is shocking stats, almost back to the stats we were seeing when just before Gerrard left, I think it was, when we could see the considerable number of the first goals. And the difference was at that point we were coming back and winning the games. We still had that creativity, we still had that pressure and the quality up front as well to finish chances. Today, let's start with last week when we went 1-0 down to St Johnstone. I don't think it ever looked like we were going to come back and score 2 goals and win that game. Again, I don't think today, as soon as we went 1-0 down, we'd had one shot on target by the 60th minute of the game. I mean, away to against St Mirren, I mean, that's not how we should be playing, and that's not the standard that you expect from the team. But it did not look like we were going to have that opportunity to come back, and we've seen how important that belief and that level of confidence can be on the other side of the city. When I think there's been 2 or 3 games now that they've won it, or they've won their game in the last couple of minutes or stoppage time, and they always seem to believe that they're going to get that win and get that goal. And we had 43, 44 minutes to get 2 goals, and at no point did I believe as a fan watching that game that we were. I was even surprised we got 1 to be honest, we were creating that little in their box. Where has that creativity gone? Is it something that's just disappeared because of the players that we've got injured and the creativity that we get from the likes of Tom Lawrence, for example? It just helps to unlock those defences, or is it down to the formation, or what is it, do you think?
I think the injuries definitely play a part. I'm not going to use it, like I said before, as an excuse for Van Bronckhorst. It's not an excuse anymore. We should definitely still be getting more out of that team. It will definitely play a part, but I don't see any recognisable patterns in our game. I don't see, you could really see it under Gerrard. You could see what the team were trying to do. And of course, it was frustrating as a fan base sometimes because you felt you're just playing the same way and you just want that to work. You're not willing to change it. But I don't even get that from Van Bronckhorst's style. I don't see anything. It is very much, I know everyone uses this, it is the horseshoe. It just goes from side to side, hoping for someone to have a wee bit of individual brilliance, like we've seen for Ryan Kent in the last 2 games. That is our tactical approach. Give it to Ryan Kent and hope he can do something for us. There's nothing. There's no style at all. We've started the last couple of games playing through central with Tillman, and it looks like we're playing better. I felt that today. We didn't start badly, and we started playing through the middle, and Tillman was getting the ball. But see, eventually, we just completely wrap it, and we just start playing the ball out wide again and crossing it in. We don't have anything. So I don't know. I don't know if I would say it's a formation thing either, because I don't think it matters what way this Rangers team play. They're still going to stick to the principles that Van Bronckhorst is trying to put in place, and I just don't think it's a style that's ever going to get any real results domestically. So yeah, it's hard. It's actually hard now to describe what it feels to watch Rangers. I was there on Wednesday night against Hearts, and everyone's just flat. Like, everyone's bored. Like, people are making jokes in the stands about, oh, here we go, it's time to cross the ball. And again, like, people are now starting to mock the style, and it's not a good look for the manager. He's not going to be able to recover from this. He might with a board, unfortunately. I know we disagree in that, but he's not going to recover this from the fans. The fans aren't going to stand for this. I'm not expecting us to play football like that prime Barcelona team. I'm not expecting that, but I'm expecting to see something that I can recognise and connect with. And I got that with the Gerrard style. And of course, he had problems, absolutely struggled a lot of the times to break down a low block, but there was at least things you could identify with. And the players coming out in and out of that team knew exactly where they had to be in possession and out of possession. And I don't get that from this team at all. I just don't think anyone has a real understanding of where they need to be at a certain time. And I think that's why the play slows down so much. You see it when Tav gets it. He looks up. There's no one really anywhere near him, and he just plays the ball back square. So, yeah, I think it's just stylistically, mate, we're really struggling. And I think the only way to change that is by changing the manager, because I don't think this manager is going to completely rip up everything he's tried to put in place and go, right, we're going to change it all now. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to just make a change.
Yeah, I just want to, just as we start to wrap up today's pod, and for the instant reaction, just want to touch on the defence and Leon King, who obviously suffered what looked like a bad injury, potentially concussion. We wish him all the best in his recovery. We all finished the game with our central midfield pairing from our game against Aberdeen, playing at centre half. I guess from that aspect, the break can't come quickly enough. But just on the St Mirren goal, I think there's a lot of leeway being given to Leon King so far because of his age and because he's come through the Rangers Academy. I've criticised him on the podcast already a few weeks ago. I don't think he's up to the standard at the moment. It's not saying he can't get there, but at the moment he's not up to the standard to even play for us in SPFL games. I think he really struggles. I think for St Mirren's goal, that's a very obvious... You're in panic mode at that point. You should not be trying to take a touch 3 yards out from goal with your back to the play. It's just not what anyone should be doing. What's your thoughts on Leon King's performances recently and his sort of contribution today?
Yeah, I think me and you have both said before that I think we both feel that Leon King has struggled, and I don't want to be too critical because, of course, I understand where he is in his development. He's only 18. He's got a lot of time to go. And I honestly do believe this will be better for him in the future. Unfortunately, it's coming at a time where the team is really in a poor run of form and his mistakes are really being highlighted. And that's a wee bit unfortunate for him. So I don't want to be too critical, but I think you are right today. I think he's got to be more aware than that. He's in his 6-yard box. He's just got to realise that when that ball's coming down, he just needs to get rid. Unfortunately, he's not even facing, away from his goal, and he has a good understanding of where everyone is. He knows he's got someone behind him. He's trying to touch it down. It's just really poor. It's hard to defend him there at all. I'm not going to be too critical because of his age. That shouldn't save him. I think we've said that before, that people are just like, oh, you can't criticise him. He's only 18. Well, he can, because he's playing for Rangers. And if you're playing, you're going to get criticism, unfortunately. But I think he's just been shown that he's maybe not at that level yet, which is completely fine, by the way. It's not, you don't have to be at SPFL level at 18. You don't. And listen, if we had a fully fit squad, Leon King wouldn't be anywhere near starting. He would be coming in probably off the bench in home games to get some more experience. So I feel for him. I really felt sorry for him at that goal today, because I don't think he's had I've not felt like he's had a lot of support around him. And I think the injury to Connor Goldson really hurts our defence. And I think you would see a lot better player in Leon King if Connor Goldson was next to him, because he's so good at pulling people through games and directing them through games. And I think I've heard this before about Danny Wilson when he came into the team and he had David Weir next to him. And I think there's a famous Walter Smith quote saying that, Liverpool won't realise, that Danny Wilson isn't ready yet because he won't have David Weir next to him. And you can see how that worked out. It is important at that position of the pitch to have partnerships. And I think that's where Leon King's been let down. But listen, it's really hard to protect him today. That was a bit of a shocking error, to be honest.
Yeah, and final point before I let you go. Ben Davies was obviously missing today because Gio said that he struggles to play 2 games in the course of in quick succession, which effectively means he struggles to play Wednesday and Saturday. That's quite a shocking statement, I think, to say. I think we all understood that he's been struggling with a bit with injury so far this season, but that's quite a shocking statement to say that a player that we've spent the best part of £4 million plus on will struggle to play 2 games per week. It just raises so many questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if this one's maybe been lost in translation. I'm going to try and protect the manager here. I know I shouldn't, and I might get a bit of stick for this, but I don't know if he means maybe it's to do with that injury that Ben Davies is carrying, and he's been carrying for a while, and he's maybe trying to say that with that he struggles to play 2 games a week. If it's the case that he struggles to play 2 games a week in general, and we will have known that he's maybe carrying some sort of a long-term problem when we've signed him, then again, I think the recruitment has to be looked at, because that's a sizable chunk of money that's went into Ben Davies. And I think we can all see that he looks a good player. He does look a good centre-half. He's done well, I think, when he's came in, but that's a big bit of our budget. 3 rising to 4 million. That's huge for us, really. It's unfortunate to say, but that's a big chunk. So if we've signed someone with the knowledge that they will struggle to make 2 games a week, then again we need to look at recruitment as a whole. If we can identify players in markets that are going to cost less than that but be more reliable, then I think we're doing something wrong when it comes to recruitment. There's definitely other markets than the Championship. So yeah,
is that your question, Ross Wilson? Is it after your defence?
Well,
it's just happened there.
Listen, I'm not saying he should be absolved of all criticism. I just wouldn't throw everything that he's put in place out the window just yet. But of course, yeah, of course he does. He needs criticism. And I would say on Ross Wilson, listen, see if he doesn't have the money to bring guys in, what can he do? We've seen the accounts this week and how much money we had to give out in terms of paying off shareholders and loans and things like that. if he doesn't have the money and he doesn't have the budget, it's difficult. But that's a whole other conversation.
See if he doesn't have the budget, tell us. Make it realistic. Make it realistic.
Of course. That's of course what we want as fans, don't we? We just want transparency sometimes. We just want to have a better understanding of what's going on with the club. And I think you would get more leeway with the fans. Fans would be more understanding. We're not idiots. We're not just customers. You know, we can understand how a business is run and what you need to be aware of. So yeah, you're totally right. You're bang on. If that is the case, then we should be told. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it there. We're almost at the 50-minute mark, so we'll leave it there. Ross, thanks very much for joining us. Mirren 1, Rangers 1. Another disappointing day as we head into the World Cup break. Please remember to subscribe to the TII YouTube channel, toggle on those notifications, and you'll get an email every single time we go live. The team will be back tomorrow night, Sunday night, with their 8 p.m. live podcast and the roundup of the week and where we are as a club as we head into the World Cup break. And then as we go through the next 4 weeks, there'll be a host of pre-recorded shows that go out, some really good interviews, some really good discussion points, and we'll also continue with our live shows a little bit less frequent than normal during when Rangers are playing games. So they'll be every Wednesday and every Sunday going forward until the end of the World Cup. And Rangers will obviously be back on, I believe it's the 16th of December. I might be wrong, might be the 15th, against Hibs at Ibrox, which on my part anyway, I hope is with a brand new manager and management team in place. All that's left to say is thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And until next time, goodbye.